The afternoon heat had the city pressed under a thumb of gold, and the tower of the hand breathed it in through every stone. Eddard Stark sat at his desk with the shutters drawn wide and nothing moving but the awnings out over the courtyard, lifting and falling like tired lungs. The book lay open where he had left it, its cracked leather binding giving off a dry smell like old almonds. A fly tapped itself senseless against the glass of a stoppered vial. Beeswax sagged in the candlesticks though the candles were unlit, and his bad leg, mended, not healed, throbbed in time with his heart. He ran a finger down the page again, though he knew each line by now, the succession of names a child could chant. Black of hair, black of hair, black of hair, and then 3 names written somewhere behind his eyes as if he had carved them there with a thin knife. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. All fair as baked wheat, all with that Lannister shine that caught a room and made the eyes slide their way. The window showed him nothing but bright haze, yet he could smell the city, river rot and fresh bread, lime and wet leather, dung and perfume and the strange sweetness of figs. It was not Winterfell. It was no place at all that he had been taught to trust. The book waited. The truth waited with it. He had thought there would be a gust of cold when he found it, that he would be steadied by the hard air of the north even here. But the truth had no temperature. It was simply a blade, his to put away or lift. When the knock came, it was so gentle he almost missed it. Vayen Poole came in with a bow, hands tucked, a master of silence despite his bulk. "My lord," he said, "the Grand Maester asked if you might have a moment. He is at your convenience." "Let him come," Ned said, and shut the book as if that could shut the road it led to. Pycelle entered with care, white beard trembling over his chest, a hand on his belly as if to steady himself against the wind that wasn't there. He always smelled faintly of must and crushed leaves. He bowed more stiffly than Poole, and his chain clinked like a tired wind chime. "My lord Hand," he said, "I beg your patience." His eyelids drooped when he was pleased with himself and fluttered when he feared interruption. And Ned took an unkind satisfaction in keeping him waiting through a long swallow of lukewarm water. "The matter is small. Small matters can trip men," Ned said. "Speak." "The Queen's children," Pycelle murmured, and his eyelids fluttered. "The weather, the air, the city is heavy at times for tender lungs. Young Tommen has been sniffling." He made the words sound like a disease. "My lady, the Queen requested my advice." "She requests much?" Ned said, and saw Pycelle's smile tremble. "Only a thought of sea air," Pycelle went on. "Not a journey to the ends of the earth. Lannisport's breezes are of good quality, and the rocks halls are sound and free of the damp that troubles old stones here. A fortnight, perhaps 2, the Queen would be comforted." Ned sat back. The chair creaked in an old language. Through the open shutters a snatch of song drifted up from some courtyard, someone tuning a lute, sour strings, and patient fingers. He thought of how even a crooked note spoke of practice. "The Queen asked you to ask me?" Pycelle's eyelids drooped to near nothing. "She mentioned your concern for the children's well-being." He drew a folded parchment from his sleeve, and Ned watched that hand with a soldier's interest. Not shaking, not too steady. "I have written an opinion for your records, my lord. Should you require a physician's sentence to lend your decision force, it is here, signed, sealed." Ned took the parchment. He did not break the seal. He knew how to read the words without opening it. The kind of writing that can be held up under any lantern and looks virtuous to whomever holds the light. He set it beside the book of lineages and wondered if they would begin to whisper to one another in the night. "Thank you," he said. Pycelle bowed, beard sweeping. "The king rides tomorrow," he murmured. "A light heart becomes him when he hunts. No worries ought to burden him. If I may presume to advise." "You have," Ned said, "and I will consider it." His voice made the old man's chain rattle. When Pycelle had gone, Ned sat with his hands flat on the table as if he had been asked to stay very still, the way a father asks a child to hold for him an awkward stack of logs. He was not a cunning man. Men told him so as a kindness and a reproach. Yet the city sharpened the edges of every choice until even the straightforward ones cut. Robert would ride south into crimson leaves and laughter and the smell of dogs and leather and fat boars and their rage. The queen would withdraw to the shadows of some column and watch with her eyes. And he would stand and choose between law and mercy for children who had not asked to be born. He rose with a grunt and the cane he refused to use in front of the men, and he went down the spiral stairs by feel, one hand on the wall, one on the rail. The tower was cool enough in its belly, and the old North in him woke up a small, wary way. The keep was a place of paths he had learned. He knew where to find Varys in the afternoon when the kitchens were quiet and the corridors behind the great hall were full of shadows that smelled of old soup. The eunuch's slippers whispered long before he appeared. He had no scent Ned could name. He bowed very deep and smiled very small. "My lord Hand," he said, "you look as if you have been troubled by the sun." "I have been troubled by a book," Ned said. "Books throw the truest shade," Varys murmured. "They make men squint and see things plainly." Ned did not bother with the courtesies. "If the queen were to take her children to Casterly Rock," he said, "how many tongues would wag? And whose?" Varys's head tilted, round as a pigeon's. "All tongues wag. The question is what story they mean to tell as." "They do. Is this a thing you wish, my lord?" Pycelle's parchment was a small tooth pressing the inside of Ned's doublet. "I wish to spare children a king's wrath." "How beautiful," Varys said, and he did not smile when he said it. "You would make yourself very alone." "I am used to that." Varys folded his hands like a man who has just washed them. "The queen will not go if you ask like a man begs a kindness of a neighbor. She will go if you ask her as the hand of the king. But you know this. You would have to say it with guards at her door and letters to the harbor master and a ship already rocking at her berth." "I can say it with a physician's letter," Ned said, "and with a mind to the king's comfort. The hunt pleases him more when the air in this city is not full of quarrels. He misses his friend." "The king misses his friend best when the friend lets him be a boy," Varys said softly. "But I am only a spider. I admire webs too much to tear them. Shall I do anything for you?" "You will do nothing for me," Ned said, "but you will do nothing against me." Varys's eyelids flickered as if he had been laughed at. "As the gods will," he murmured, and the whisper of his slippers stitched shut the dark behind him. Ned stood a while in the deep cool passage and let his eyes learn it. He thought of Robert's laugh. It was not what it had been, but sometimes at some jest he found himself inside the old sound and the years fell away. He thought of a girl with a crown of blue roses. He thought of a long, thin boy with ink-stained fingers bending over a book of names. He thought of 3 children who had his enemy's face and no say in it at all. When he went to the training yard, the light had softened to a honey that lay warm on the reds of the tiled roof. Syrio Farrell stood in the center with his hands behind him and his bald head gleaming as if it had been polished. Arya danced around him with a wooden sword that was no sword at all if you asked the Northmen who leaned on spears nearby. She had sweat in her bangs and a set in her mouth he recognized from a mirror he had not used since Winterfell. He watched for a time. Syrio never touched her save with his eyes and his words. The little taps of the wood blade on her wrists and elbows were taps of instruction, and Arya grinned when they stung. She saw him first and made the mistake of looking. Syrio flicked her on the shoulder and laughed sharp as a coin on table wood. "Again," Syrio said. When he finally called a halt, Arya turned toward her father without wiping her face as Sansa would have done. She glowed, even through the sweat. "Did you see the turn?" she asked. "He thought I would step right, but I remembered the cat, and I saw," he said. "You are quicker this week." "That's because I don't sit sewing all day," she said, without malice. "Sansa sits. I move." She softened, catching herself. "She's good at sitting. You know." "She is good at many things," Ned said, "and so are you." "Better to move," Arya whispered. "You will have a great deal of time to do it," Ned said. He put a hand on her damp hair and felt the little ridge of a bruise where Syrio had taught a lesson that morning. He thought of ships moving with the tide. "Fetch your sister to supper when you're done." Sansa was at her embroidery with Jane Poole and 2 girls whose names escaped him, their heads together, threads catching the last of the sun. Sansa's fingers moved like birds, quick and delicate. She looked up with a smile that checked itself when she saw only him. "Father," she said carefully, "Is it true the king hunts tomorrow?" "It is," he said. "He has the look of it on him." She smoothed a wrinkle in the linen. The little stag she was stitching had a proud head and long legs. Joffrey said perhaps I could see him off. "Do you think?" "You may," Ned said. He swallowed what came after. He had no taste for lying to his own. But there are harms that feed harm if you refuse them. Not too early. You need sleep more than you need dust in your eyes. "I don't know how I shall sleep," Sansa murmured. Jane leaned close behind her as girls do when they share a secret that is only the shape of a secret. "Will the queen also watch?" He waited a breath. "The queen will be occupied." Sansa's needle paused. Then she bent to her stag again. "I suppose she has much to do." "She does," he said. He did not sleep much himself. He stayed in his chair until the candle guttered and the moths fell like old leaves around it. And when he woke, he had a crick in his neck and the city was already beginning to post its mourning. Shouts at a cartwheel, a priest calling the faithful, the splash of a boy dumping a pail down a stairwell. He drank small beer and chewed a heel of bread and felt more soldier than lord. He went to the queen when the pale blue hour had already given way to white. He left his guards at the door. He knew he ought to bring them, but he did not want to speak to a lady through steel. Her chambers were a garden that smelled of orange peel and lavender. She sat with her back half turned to him so that the window lit her hair and made it into a thing he could have pulled as a boy and run away laughing. She was careful with her hands. He saw that first. "My lady," he said. "My lord hand." Her mouth smiled without a wrinkle near the eyes. "Is it morning already? The city moves like a hive." He did not waste anything but breath. "You will take your children to Casterly Rock." He had thought she would startle like a mare, but she did not. She lifted a cup and sipped like a woman in her own garden in any town in any summer along the sea. "Will I?" she said. "Pycelle advises sea air," he said. "The boy sniffs and the girl has been pale. The city is unhealthy in a heat like this." I was not aware the hand took an interest in drafts and coughs. She looked at him then, flat and bright. "Your daughters would profit by sea air as well. I do not see tea. Hem packing." "My daughters remain with me," Ned said. "You will go with your children. Lannisport is near enough and the roads are safe with ample guard." "Safe," she said, and her smile finally made a small, hard ripple at one corner. "Your men with my children. How safe they will be. You will be escorted by your own as well," he said. "And Sandor Clegane, if you wish it. I do not mean you harm, my lady." "No," she said. "You mean to harm me in a way that leaves no bruise, which you think is mercy." She rose from the couch and set the cup down exactly in its ring on the table. "Tell me true, Stark. Why would you send me from the capital that is my garden, from the king who is my husband? Why this hurry when you scold others for it?" He knew the taste of the truth. It was iron and a little sweet. He did not draw it out for her like a blade. He laid it down plain between them. "Because I know what you have done," he said softly. "I know what the book knows and the gods will judge. And I know what Robert will do if he hears it before I have done what I can. I have no love for you, but I will not see children murdered for the pride of their mother and the temper of a king." Her eyes flickered, not with surprise but with some old memory dropping down a well. She made one step and then another, slow as if she were walking in a hall where the stones might give way beneath her weight. "You know nothing," she said. "I know enough," he answered. "I know enough to require that you depart the city with your children and stay at your father's side until the king says otherwise. Until my father reads the insult in the lines of your letter," she said. "Until he feels for his sword as he does not for his sons. Do you know my father, Northman? Men tell me you are not a fool, only a virtue without wit. You will let me go and think that is the end of it. And you will look out your window and see the west has grown a mountain where the road used to be. Your father will open your house to you," Ned said. "And if he is wise, he will keep you there." She put her hand flat on the table and looked at it, as if her hand were some new thing that had just arrived, interesting and not entirely welcome. When she spoke again, her voice had gone quiet and young. "You want me gone before he returns. You think he will not notice if he finds the room empty that you have made of his hall. I think he will notice less than he would notice your blood on the tiles." She laughed then, sudden and soft, and he realized it was the first true laugh she had let him hear. Robert is a stag. He strikes with his antlers and bleeds afterward. He is a man of shouts, not knives. I have seen him with a knife, Ned said. In war, he does not always shout. You will go within the day. There is a ship for you at the river. It flies your colors. Say it is a visit to your father. Say it is air for the children. Say what you like. Only go. She watched him for a time that was longer than the time of the words. He thought, suddenly, of how still a cat can be when it is deciding if a bird is worth the leap. Do you think you are merciful because you do not call the guards and do not write the king and do not shout under windows? She asked at last. Did you think of what you take from me? My city, my stage, my son's next steps. You are gentle when you mean to throw a woman out of her own house. She lifted one finger as if to set it against his chest and changed her mind. We will go. It startled him more than a strike. He held it out before him like a thing a child hands you and expects to be pleased by. A wilting flower, a beetle. Within the day, he said. We will go within the day, she said, as if it had been her thought all along. Send your letter to my father. Put your seal on it with those clean hands. Remember to wash them afterward. He left her garden and the taste of orange peel and lavender followed him down the hall. When he reached the stair, he found his breath had gone somewhere else and left his body to work alone for a while. He sent for the city watch commander, for the harbor master, for a scribe. He sent for his own house guard. He sent for bread because his hands shook and he knew bread steadies hands. He watched the arrangements knit themselves together with the patient motion of a woman turning out a sock. Letters went. Men trod stairs. A ship with a lion on its stern and a white sail took up a berth at the mudgate. The gold cloaks muttered that there was more steel than usual on the road to the river. Gold cloaks always muttered when they were not the heaviest armed in their street. The queen's banners were unfurled to air them of the palace smell and make them smell of river wind. Sandor Clegane took a horse and rode down to squint at the ship himself. He did not much like ships, Ned guessed, from the way his shoulders went up and stayed up when he looked at the water. In the midst of it, the king came to the yard with a hawk on his fist and a grin that was younger than his belly. He clapped Ned on the shoulder and made him stagger, and the men in the shade breathed out together like men who have been waiting to see if the earth will shake. You are grim, Ned, Robert said. A man has to hunt it off him. Come with us tomorrow. Leave the ledgers. Your hair grows grayer when you stare at them. Someone must stare, Ned said. Let it be Pycelle, Robert snorted. Let it be any old man with enough beard to hide a sleeping mouth. Come. He lowered his voice without losing the bellow. I spoke hard at her yesterday. It's no good. She twists words. Gods, I hate words. I want meat on a spit and dogs underfoot and the sound of my own breath in my chest. He looked toward the old red walls as if he could see through them to his queen, and then he looked away again. Keep the city from biting itself while I'm gone. I will, Ned said. Robert's eyes were bright with drink already. He remembered. A boy at the Trident with a smeared face and a hammer in both hands and no fear in the backs of his knees. He wanted to say, do not drink so much tomorrow. He wanted to say, keep a cloak on after sunset. He wanted to say, there are men's plans in the woods these days, not only boars. Instead, he said the thing men say to kings because anything else is a kind of treason. My lord. They parted with a clasp that was mostly bone and old affection buried under fat and duty, and Ned stood long where Robert left him because movement felt like a decision and he had made enough to last a day. By evening, the queen's rooms had become a caravan. Dresser chests went down the stairs like ponderous animals with men groaning under their straps. A basket of kittens mewed and was quiet when a little boy's hands went into it. Marcella stood with a maid who braided her hair in 2 ropes and tucked flowers into them because that is what girls do to make a journey more bearable. Joffrey shouted and then explained the reason for his shouting in tones that sounded very like a man pleading his case in a hall he means to own one day. When the hound told him to mind his feet on the stair, he glared at him as if he could scorch him with his mother's eyes. Sansa cried when she heard, quietly and prettily with her hands folded, because she understood that crying was permitted here but not the messy kind. Jane Poole cried messily for both of them and laughed through it and scolded Sansa not to spoil her face. Arya came to the door of the Queen's Hall and watched everything with that narrow gaze that seemed to strip the paint from doors. She saw the kittens and the braid flowers and the hound's burned cheek and Joffrey's expensive impatience and stored them all, as a squirrel stores nuts. She saw her father, too, and he knew she knew there was a thing on him. A weight, but she did not ask. He blessed her for it and cursed at both. They went at dawn, when the city had the damp smell of swillied alleys and the first bread. The sky was a white that would be blue later. The ship's masts shrugged and creaked. The Queen's litter took the cobbles like a barge taking little waves, smooth and inevitable. The guards fanned out, gold cloaks with their polearms neatly vertical, red cloaks from the rock with their eyes on everything but their own masters, and a prudent wedge of household guards that Ned had put at the rear. A line of cooks came from a side door with baskets of pears for the galley, their aprons ghosting around their legs in the morning breeze. Cersei did not hide. She came out in green and gold with her hair loose enough to move. She had taken the time it takes to become unmistakable. She placed her hand on Joffrey's shoulder as if it rested there. He stood very straight. Myrcella looked back toward the Red Keep only once, and Tommen not at all because the kittens wriggled and he could not both hold them and look without dropping one. And Tommen did not drop things if he could help it. Sandor Clegane swung up easily, the great dog on his shield burned and black. He looked down at Ned without bowing. Jory Castle would have bowed. Jory's name and the emptiness after it cut quick as a splinter. Clegane, Ned said by way of courtesy. Stark, the hound said, by way of not pretending more courtesy than he had. His horse danced under him, picking up the scent of the river and its small rot. Cersei's eyes found Ned's, held them, and went on as if she had finished counting. When the last chest had vanished and the last saddle had been checked, the cavalcade began to move. The sound of it, leather, hooves, the squeak of a wheel that should have been oiled last night, was as particular as a song and as forgettable once it had passed. The city watched without pretending otherwise. Women leaned from windows and men put down their bundles. Children ran until some guard's boot-toe taught them where running stops. At the mud gate the river opened its mouth and breathed over them. The ship bobbed close in, and gangplanks went across on men's shoulders with the ease of practice. The Queen did not waver under the eyes. She had learned long ago not to wobble under eyes. Joffrey took the gangplank as if it had been erected in his honor. He did not look down, because Joffrey never looked down. Myrcella watched her step and then her father's city. Tommen clutched the basket and the basket mewed, and he forgot his feet until a sailor's hand steadied him with a kindness that left him embarrassed. Sandor came last of that group and stood with one foot on wood and one on stone. Caught in the moment men are caught in when they suspect the ground itself has forgotten how to treat them. Cersei paused and turned back. Ned stood without moving. For an instant something like bewilderment crossed her face, small and private. She made a gesture that might have been a wave if it had had any softness to it. And then she went aboard and the ship shut its mouth. The river was quick with mourning. The oars took their own time, dipping, rising, a flash of wet polish when the sun came. The short reach below the gate made a quiet that would not last. The ship swung clear. A gull laughed in a voice that sounded like it had been drinking. Ned watched until the bright square of her window became a coin and then a bead and then nothing. He stood until the crowd got bored of watching him. He waited while the last of the Queen's baggage went past. While the kitchen girls pointed with the tips of their fingers because they had to point. While the gold cloaks found something to be alert about because that is how a man does his work when it feels like no work at all. He walked back up the hill to the Red Keep and took the steps one at a time. And when he shut the door to his room the sound was too small to hold what he had done. He wrote to the Lord of Casterly Rock with words that could be read by any eye in any hall and understood to mean exactly what they said and something else besides. He used Pycelle's letter and he used the harbor master's ledger, and he used the king's friendships and his own name and the hand seal. He wrote to Stannis as well, because there is a difference between secrets and silence. The Raven took his letter toward a gray island where a man counted candles. Another took the letter toward a mountain full of gold and older things than gold. By midday the castle slipped back into the little tasks that swallow big ones whole. Girls sewed, men sharpened, Boys ran messages until their ankles meant more to them than the messages did. The king rode out after a meal too wet and too early, with men shouting the names of dogs as if they were saints. Sansa watched with her face like a cup. Arya watched with hers like a knife. Ned went to meet with men whose names sounded like they had been invented to be used in rooms with no breezes. Baelish, Pycelle, a scribe or two, a handful of lords in town for reasons they kept in their sleeves like cards. They talked about coin. Baelish made jokes that sounded like stories that sounded like lies that made the truth go down easier for men who needed it to. Ned signed where he had to and said no where he could. When he was done, the sun had swung and the city had turned its face toward the river for the cool. He let himself be tired. He went to the Godswood because he had not been enough. The tree there had no face to scowl at him, no red leaves to listen like ears, no roots with memories. The southern gods were a different sort of silence. He knelt in any case and spoke to whatever heard. He did not hear the step on the path until the last leaf crackled. Renly came out of the shade with that quick green smile he wore like a scarf. "Forgive me," Renly said lightly. "I have the habit of walking in gardens as if I were meant for them. You look like a man who has lit a lantern in a high wind." "It is a windy city," Ned said. "So it is." Renly came to sit on the bench and crossed one leg over the other with a conscious grace. "I hear the Queen has taken a holiday." "So she has," Ned said. Renly's gaze slid sideways with boyish mischief. "A holiday that may become an exile if anyone is unlucky. I advised you once to take what you know and act on it like a man who wants to keep his head. You have acted differently." "I have acted as I can and be myself," Ned said. "That is one way to lose your head as well," Renly mused. "But perhaps a prettier one." He softened. "Forgive me. I think too often that if I had been born first, things would be, a dozen things. Youth is always kinder to itself." He leaned forward. "My brother rides without his nurse. That is good. Perhaps he will bend his knee to a boar and pray to something besides wine and chase. Perhaps." He straightened. "If anything must be done before he returns, it must be done quickly. Then say what you have come to say." Renly flicked a leaf with one finger. "Stannis should be here. He is not. He is a good man in that way that makes other men want to step out of the room before he enters. But he is iron. My brother is wax near any heat. You must choose one metal to put in the mold. You send the Queen away and keep the children here. I thought you might. But you are gentler even than I supposed. If Robert should fall from his horse and jolt his wits a little, even a little, the city will swallow its own tongue and choke. Men will move pieces. The board will be knocked askew. You know this." "I know it," Ned said, though it made his mouth sour to agree with a man who played with power as if it were a cat with a tail to twist. "Then be ready," Renly said. "I will do what I can to keep the board level. But I am no Stannis. I am only charming." He made a courtly bow to a tree that did not care for bows and went away with the quickness of a man who dislikes being seen leaving. On the river, the oars dipped and rose, dipped and rose. The Queen's ship slid out from the last reach of the city's stink, and the smell changed to a thing like wet rope and tar and open water. The children were sleepy with dawn. Myrcella's braid had come loose and a flower hung by its green stem against her neck, tickling whenever she turned her head. Joffrey had been sick once and bore it like an accusation against the world. Tommen had not been sick at all and felt guilty for that. Their mother stood at the stern looking backward until there was nothing to look at. Only the white seemed the ship stitched through the water, and then even that unraveled. Joffrey came to her with his jaw set so very much like a man's that it appeared almost a boy's again. "I did not wish to go," he said. "I wished to see the hunt." "Your wishes blow like foam," she said without heat, and it comforted him inexplicably, the way a thrown cloak comforts a shivering horse even if it is an ugly cloak. "There will be other hunts. It is my city," he said. "I should not be sent away from my city." "You go to your grandfather," she said, "who was a more serious city than any of stone." She set her hand on his cheek, and he did not pull away because there was no one whom he felt he must impress at that moment. "Do you know why I agreed to go? Because the Stark commanded it," he said, with a clever boy's contempt for a word like commanded. "Because I do not like to dance when men try to tell me the steps," she said. And because I choose when to keep my children near light and when near shade, it is time for shade. There will be sun again." He nodded as if he had understood, and because it pleased him to be treated like a man who understood. The hound stood near enough to hear and far enough to be thought not to. He watched the stir of river weeds in the current and thought it looked like hair in a woman's bath. Later, when the ship cleared the mouth of the river and put her nose to the open, the swell made the children sleepy, then cross, then sleepy again. Cersei felt the deck under her feet like an animal she had not chosen. Faithful enough, not to be trusted for a moment. She had been at sea little enough as a girl that every creek was a memory of a creek, not a knowledge of a creek. She resented that. Each gull cried as if it had some private joke about the landbound. She stood until her back said sit, and then she sat until her blood said stand. And when night came, she did not admit to herself that she was tired until she was asleep. The journey along the coast to Lannisport was more a series of short sleeps than a voyage. The captain, a man with forearms like blocks of walnut and a scar that seemed to have turned his nose a little away from itself, came to her when the seas frightened themselves during a day of wind. "It will calm by night," he said carefully, as one says to a panther, "or it will not, and that too will pass. Do your work," she said. "Do it well." "Aye," he said, still careful. "This is a good ship. She has carried worse and liked it less." He went back to his quarterdeck and sang something under his breath, a coarse little chant to a woman whose name was the ship's name and perhaps not all of her. Cersei knew the words men used to stitch their courage. Men did not know the words women used. Women kept theirs inside and passed them to their daughters with hairpins and bracelets and kisses on the crown of a head. She touched Myrcella's hair, feeling the salt that had set there like a fine dusting of sugar. Tommen slept with his mouth open. Joffrey had not slept yet, because he would not admit the sea had made him soft in the bones. On the second night, when the ship swayed gently like a cradle someone had grown bored of rocking, Cersei lay awake and counted backward through the years. She counted tournaments and feasts and quarrels like strings of beads. She counted letters. She counted the times she had thought, very softly, "If I can get through this day, I will be safe because tomorrow is mine." She counted the ways a woman could be wrong. She dreamed. She was a girl again in a red hall that had not seemed red then because it was the only world she knew. The rock breathed differently than other stone. It had a slow, dry exhale. She could hear it in her sleep even now, or thought she could. She woke with her hand clenched and unclenched it and felt nothing there but the print of her own nails. In King's Landing, the king drank and rode and drank and slept and woke to drink. The sun made a glory of his hair where it still held to his head. Men watched him as men watch a campfire. Too close and it singes. Too far and you lose the light. He laughed at a priest's attempt to bless the hounds. And when the boar broke cover, he shouted the way a boy shouts and put his heels to his horse like a man who remembers how. Lancel poured for him when he asked. It was not until later that he wondered if pouring less would have been wiser. He carried a skin on his back that pulled at his shoulders and made red marks that kept their own counsel. When the boar turned and ran, it ran like a black door shutting. The ground under the king's horse was not as sure as pride. The men yelled the words men always yell in such moments. Names, prayers, swears, nonsense as binding as poetry, and the dogs became a music of their own. That day, and the one after, Lord's rooms in the city grew warm with the heat of whispers. Baelish sat with his feet up on some little lord's table and moved a coin across his knuckles and smiled like a fox who is enjoying himself among chickens in daylight. Varys walked as if he were looking for shade at noon and found only the either-or of it. Sun or shadow, nothing mild. Pycelle adjusted small glasses on his nose and wept in a way that made men feel they had been unkind to suspect him of anything so crude as a plan. Renly sent riders with notes that could be read out loud by anyone and still meant something to someone. Ned sat with a map open. The Kingswood, the roads, the river like a snake that lies sunning and looks asleep. He marked nothing on it. He ate very little. He kept a cup of ale by him and never touched it. And the fly from yesterday found it and spun itself into a drunk little joy. He went down to the yard at dusk. Sansa had her hands folded and calm, her face set to learn this changed world like a song she had decided to love. Arya was scratching in the dust with a stick, making lines that might have been letters if letters cared for dust. They looked up like mirrors reflecting two different moons. He told them nothing new. He told them supper would be bread and pea soup because the kitchens were busy sending meat to the king's men on the road. Sansa said, "Of course." Arya said, "I'll take mine with salt." He wanted, for a moment, to put his hand on both their heads and push time backward. On the third morning after the queen's departure, a rider came with a cut lip and a dust mask of dried sweat on his face and a folded parchment in his glove hand. He had the eyes of a kind man who had seen something he did not want living in his head. He gave the parchment to the first guard, who gave it to a squire, who gave it to a steward, who gave it to Ned, so that by the time it reached him it had acquired an importance it might not have had if the rider had simply shouted in the street. Ned broke the seal and read. The words were curt and hard and meant to be. The king had been gored. The boar had died with his spear in it. The king had not died. A litter had been made of green boughs. The party moved slow. He read it twice. He read it a third time and felt what he had not allowed himself to feel. The private animal of relief. Then he felt what followed it, which was not relief at all, but the knowledge that a spared life was sometimes more dangerous than a clean death. He sent for Pycelle. He sent for Renly. He sent a quiet boy to pray for him in a chin-scraped whisper in the September because it could do no harm. RM and might call down some mercy that did not count the coins of it too closely. On the ship, the wind came into a new quarter and made everything in the world seem as if it had shifted half an inch to the left. Sailors know this feeling. It makes them glance up at the sky as if someone had coughed. The captain changed something on the yard and the ship's shoulders loosened and she went easier. The children asked how far it was, and their mother said not far because children do not count distance the way men do. The hound rolled his shoulders and decided that ships were no worse than they were before. At night, Cersei leaned on the window frame and let the wind take her hair and stood like a figure on a prow even though she stood on her own deck. She thought of her father reading her letter. She thought of him reading Ned Stark's. She had seen him read other men's letters, a small tightening of the mouth, a tap of one finger, a gaze that seemed as if it went through the paper and into a room where all the men in the letter were naked and had nowhere to put their hands. He would send word. He would not call her a fool in writing. He had never called her a fool where she could hear it. He had a way of teaching that did not require words. "Mother," said Myrcella's voice, hovering as if she did not wish to step on the deck. "Will we see the rock tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow," Cersei said, "but soon. Do you think grandfather will be angry?" "He will be pleased to see you," she said, and left off the rest for a bedtime older than Myrcella's. "He will show you the Lord's Hall. He will give you a stag that is not a stag at all, to ride in the yard. He will let you feed it apples with your flat hand." Myrcella smiled and went away. Cersei stayed. The water made a sound that had no words. It sounded like a question and an answer and 1,000 things that did not concern her at all. At the edge of the Kingswood, a man with a poet's mouth and a butcher's hand stood beside a litter made of green boughs and waited for the king to open his eyes again. He had done what he could. He had bathed the wound, which stank as wounds do. He had kept flies off the places flies favor. The king had opened his eyes and said something like a man recounting a tale he meant to make into a better tale later. Then he slept. Around them the men of the hunt had made a ring that was really a circle of fear and comfort both. Some had gone ahead to prepare the castle for a king who would come slower than a king should come. Some had stayed to bleed and bind. Lancel sat near the foot of the litter with his head down like a schoolboy caught with a note in his sleeve. When they reached the city, the bells made their own decisions about tone and number. The men in the streets made way as water does for something heavier than itself. The litter went up the hill with even steps. The air smelled of mint. Someone had thought to throw it before the litter. Ned met them in the yard with a face he could not make into something it was not. He did not look at Lancel. He did not look at the spear that came in ahead of the litter with black boar hair still wound against the flanges where the blood had dried it. He looked at Robert's face and the way the beard bristled half-white above a lip that had been bitten. "Ned," Robert said as if they had met by accident at an inn. "I killed the boar. Did I tell you? I killed him." "You did," Ned said. "Well done. Ugly beast," Robert said with deep, happy loathing. "He gored me. I felt it like a woman's finger. Then I killed him. I will show you the head." It looks like it could make a soup angry. His breath hitched in a way that made men near him look at the floor. Gods, I am thirsty. You will have what you need, Ned said. Maester. Pycelle made a mouth like a purse. He shuffled forward and began his murmurs. The old man looked like a boy playing at physician with leeches made of date pits. Behind him, Renly stood like a shadow shaped into a man and made a little motion with his hand that meant, "We must speak." They laid Robert in a bed with sheets that had never yet had a wound in them. They thought to draw a curtain and call it privacy, which is a thing kings are granted whether or not it is real. Pycelle moved like a tired priest over an altar that has seen better offerings. Ned stood with his hand on the bedpost and watched his friend praise his own spear in terms that would have been boasting if not for the way he smiled in his sleep after each phrase. That night, while the maester fussed and the king drifted and the city muttered to itself like a woman darning, Ned took up quill again. He wrote to Stannis a second letter, this one with fewer words and more weight. He wrote nothing to the queen. There was nothing to write that would not be read by someone he did not choose. On the fourth morning since the queen's departure, a gull made a sound over the ship that told men it had seen land it liked. Sailors pretend their wisdom is only superstition until they are old enough to be wise. And even then they camouflage the wisdom in old jokes, so they can say it safely. The captain said, "Hear that?" And a man said, "He's after your breakfast." And the captain smiled and said, "Aye, my breakfast in the harbor." And the men grinned because they liked such a charm. The wind shifted enough to bring them a breath of something that was not open water. It smelled like a city that had washed its face. "Lannisport," said a man high in the rigging because he loved to be the first to say it. Tommen ran to the rail and tried to see what the man saw. Myrcella took his hand to keep him from seeing more ocean than boy, and Joffrey rolled his shoulders like a prince who had invented harbors. Cersei came to the rail. She saw the teeth of the breakwaters and the masts like thin trees in winter, and the color of the water change as it came in to be a different kind of green. Far beyond that she saw the rock itself where a white triangle of banner could sometimes be seen when the wind remembered to boast. The rock always looked nearer to her than it was. It had a way of bending distance toward itself. She straightened. The wind pressed the silk of her gown against her thigh and she let it. The last time she had come home she had been a bride in a litter. And the last time after that she had been a mother with a child she meant to show like a jewel she had made herself. This time she came like iron wrapped in silk. They made the harbor with a creak and a sigh and a hail answered by a hail from men on the quay. Ropes went down, lines came up. The ship learned anew how to be still. The gangplank went aboard with a clatter. Someone had sent a litter. Someone always did. There were banners with their lions like a row of brothers swearing something in gold voices. A man in crimson with a very white collar bowed to her and said her name in a way that made it sound as if he had rehearsed. "My lady," he said, "Lord Tywin expects you." "I expect him," she said. "These are my children." The man said he had always known that without needing to be told, which pleased her less than it ought to have. He stood aside and let Sandor pass first because men who spend time with dogs learn to look at the teeth before the eyes. The children went down in order, which made a pattern of its own. Joffrey, bright and sure. Myrcella, Grace. Tommen, solid as a basket of kittens. When Cersei stepped on the plank it felt as if it returned her weight to her, not the waters. The city smelled of old fish and money and smoke and lemons and arrogance. The people of Lannisport are good at keeping their faces in order. They did so now, though some must have wondered at the queen returning without the king. Before the thought could ripen to a question, there were men to take the luggage, men to laugh at nothing, men to show the smooth way up from the quay. Cersei had always liked Lannisport in the way one likes a mirror that flatters. It reflected the rock's wealth, not its hardness. The road from quay to gate had been swept. In the hall at the rock the air was cool and dry and had its own old gravity. Fires could not make this hall warm. They could only make it less cold. Tywin Lannister stood in the place that has belonged to a lord since Stone learned how to be called lord. And Cersei saw that he had not waited in such a posture since she herself had come home in silk before. It was a kind of courtesy he extended to very few, and there was a lesson in that she did not need to read twice. "Father," she said. "Daughter," he said. His eyes went once over the children in a count that took their measure more usefully than a kiss would have done. Joffrey straightened, eager to be seen as a man, and Tywin permitted him to be seen as a boy for 1 more month. Myrcella curtsied and Tommen looked at the floor until his mother's hand pressed his shoulder in a way that meant lift your eyes. He lifted them. "You have come without your husband," Tywin said, with a voice that could have been remarking on weather that was drier than expected. "I have come with your grandchildren," she said. "The king hunts. The Hand advises sea air." "The Hand?" Tywin said, as if it were a priest's title and not a man's, and in a way it was. He took them within the line that was family and allowed the hall to close around them. Servants became absent in that way the best servants do. The children were led to rooms that had been prepared, the way men prepare for war and women for births. Quietly, with an attention to linens. When the doors closed behind them and the room became a fraction smaller than it had been, Tywin said, "Tell me the thing behind the thing." Cersei told him. She did not sully it with extra scruples. She did not tell him more than he needed in words. She knew he would find the rest himself. She told him what Ned Stark had said. She told him what she had said in reply. She told him of Pycelle's letter and of the ship and of the city looking, and of Renly's eyes in the garden, and of Varys's lack of smell, and of Baelish's hands that never sweated. She did not tell him her fear. He could smell fear. One did not need to speak it. She did not tell him her rage. He had fed on his own rage long past the day it had made him thin. He listened until she had finished, and then he let the silence under the rock say the next thing. "Stark," he said. "Only the name. Stark is nothing if not himself." "He thinks this is mercy," she said. "Mercy is a tool," Tywin said. "Stark uses the tools he knows. In your case, he selects a soft one. He does not know how to hammer." He went to the table where a map lay under a weight made in the shape of a lion. He put one finger on the city that was not theirs in truth, yet always theirs in thought. "The king. Gord," she said. She let herself smile as if this were nothing but a news from the hunt. "Alive. Good," he said. It might have been unexpected. It might have been relief. With Tywin, the words came so clean they did not show the dirt under the nails. Alive means men will not dare to move their pieces as crudely as they would at a death. Alive gives us a day. "Will you go to him?" Cersei asked. "When it is wise," Tywin said. "Not when it looks loyal and costs me the game." He tapped the map once, twice. "You will keep the children quiet. No letters. Anything you must say only to me and with your mouth in this room." Cersei's mouth made a small hard line that could be taken for obedience in bad light. "He will write to you," she said. "He has," Tywin said, and laid a hand on a folded, already read letter that had been waiting on the table under the lion's paw. "He writes as if paper reproaches him for any ink spilled. He has used little." "He is himself," she said, echoing him. "He is," Tywin said. He turned then, and for a moment his face was a landscape Cersei recognized. Intimately and could not name, and then it smoothed and was simply her father's again. "You will hire no singers," he added, almost as an afterthought. "You will send no presents to the Septon. You will employ patience." She laughed, because it was that or bite her own hand. "You ask a woman to employ patience the way you ask a man to employ his sword. I will do it because I must." "You will do it because I ask it," Tywin said. His voice was no harder than it had been, but it reminded her of what he was, which is a kind of stone that chooses. "Go and be seen by those who must see you, and invisible to the rest." The halls of the rock remembered her. She felt it in the way the air moved around her ankles, the way doorways framed her. She went to the balcony that looked over the city and saw the harbor where she had just been. Small as a girl's toy, the sun made the roofs a checkerboard. She could make herself believe, for a time, that she was home. In the Red Keep, Ned sat with Renly and Pycelle and a scribe whose nose bled when he was nervous. The king slept and woke and slept and wanted wine and took poultices and swore at them. Once he said, "Cersei," and then looked at Ned as if he had bitten a sweet and found a seed he had forgotten would be there. "Where is she?" he asked. "At Lannisport," Ned said. He kept his voice flat. The maester prescribed sea air for the children. The city was restless. I sent her for a time." Robert stared as if the words were in a foreign script. "You are a cold bastard when you want to be," he said at last, and laughed a little and then winced because laughing moved something that did not wish to move. "Good, good. Perhaps I will drink and think better with fewer eyes on me. Gods, she makes the very air a court." He turned his head and saw the cup he was not meant to have. "Give me that." "Later," Ned said. Robert sighed like a bellows. His face softened for a heartbeat and was suddenly the boy. "You remember when we slept in a cow byre to keep from freezing?" he asked, not to be answered. "We smelled like kings." He closed his eyes. "Stay," he said, as if Ned had been halfway out the door. "I dream better when you stay." "I am here," Ned said, and he stayed. The city went on. It always does. The fishmongers shouted and the sept bells rang and the brothels opened their doors like red mouths and the gold cloaks beat men for being poor too loudly where lords might hear it. A cat had kittens under a cheese seller's cart, and an old man played dice with himself and cheated so he could complain. A boy stole a plum and a woman slapped him and then gave him another plum. A list of grievances was read in a square by a man who had never himself been grieved at anything so small as the things on his list. Life resumed as if nothing had happened, because the great things happen in rooms where only a few eyes can see them, and the city has many more eyes than those. On the 5th day, the king woke with a clarity that tasted of pain. He gripped Ned's forearm and left fingerprints that would fade by noon. "Write," he said. "Write what must be written." He spoke slowly, like a man pulling a net and counting the weights as they bump his hand. Ned wrote. He wrote the things a king says to bind his will to paper because men cannot trust other men to repeat exactly what they heard when gold and fear begin to talk. He wrote and he watched the letters form and hated the way ink looks when it is not blood and not water yet binds more surely than either. When at last Robert slept again, and Renly had gone away to send his own letters in a different hand, and Pycelle had taken his chain into a corner to polish it with a nervous cloth, Ned went out into a corridor where the air did not taste like a wound. He stood with his back to the stone and let his head thump it once, lightly, because it felt good to make a small sound that belonged to no one but him. He thought of a ship pushing past the mouth of a river. He thought of a father at a table with a lion paperweight. He thought of a boar's bristles under a layer of blood. He thought of Sansa's even stitches and Arya's dusty lines. He thought how winter sometimes announces itself not with snow, but by making the wind forget the smell of flowers. On the gold road between Lannisport and King's Landing, the summer dust lay down in the ruts like a sleeping dog. A rider in plain brown with a clean-shaven jaw and a mouth that liked to whistle, when there was no one to hear it, cantered east with a satchel that held no letters and much news. He had eyes that saw more than they told. He passed apple orchards where boys had built platforms and declared them forts, and farmhouses with porches where women shelled peas and told each other things that would be true by supper time. He slept in ditches by his preference, even when an inn had clean straw and a girl who would have smiled to see him. He kept his face turned toward the sun's rising and did not think of the heat, because heat is what a rider chooses when he chooses speed. At the Rock, Tywin sat with his son's son and watched him try to argue toward a conclusion with nothing to prop his argument up but pride. It is a skill to watch a boy display himself and not strike him down for it. Tywin had it. He said little. When Joffrey had finished with his last flourish, Tywin said a single sentence that was not cruel and not kind and left the boy with nothing to push against, which is the best way to teach a boy that he will need more than flair in the city, where men eat flair like sweets. In the Red Keep, Ned dreamed he walked in snow. The snow did not hold his boot marks. He looked back and saw a perfect field. When he woke, he did not know if that was good luck or a warning. The day took up its tasks again. Stairs were climbed and descended. Letters were sealed and sent, and opened and read and burned and kept. A man counted coppers and wished each were a silver. A woman penned a knife for kitchen use and knew it could serve for other uses if the knight asked it. A singer changed a word in a song and made himself weep with his own wit. The city was itself, which is to say a beast with too many heads and too many bellies, hungry and curious and impossible to keep in anyone's stall. Toward evening, as the sun found the angle that makes the Red Keep look as if it has learned to be merciful, a second rider came with news about the king that was not worse and not better, only more. The wound had the stubbornness of a thing that intends to be remembered. The king had a temper when he hurt, which is how kings tell you they are not dead. He wanted wine. He was given watered wine and scolded. He drank it and swore at the thinness of it and asked for more. He spoke the queen's name once, and the name trailed off as if the syllables had far to travel and no horse. Ned stood at the window and watched the gulls fly against the evening wind and return to their nesting places on the walls like men returning to their wives. He thought, not for the first time, of what remains of a choice when all its reasons have been folded and stacked and put away. He had sent the queen away. He had kept the king alive if keeping him from a second goblet counts as a kind of life. He had written words that would bring other words. He had made himself the sort of man who could do these things. Snow would come. Ships would come. The letter from the rock would come with its courteous threat wrapped in silk like a blade kept in a lady's bodice. He set his hands on the sill and let the stone take his palm's heat. He could feel the cool rise through him as if the castle were reminding him of something he already knew. Stone outlasts men and their ploys. Stone remembers. Stone is the earth making itself useful. He heard light feet in the corridor and did not turn because he knew them. Arya came and leaned on the sill beside him and pretended not to be shorter than the window. She had cleaned the dust from her fingers but not under her nails. "Is the king going to die?" she asked the heir. "Not today," he said. She thought about that and accepted it as a kind of truth. "I don't like the hound," she offered, because when a child says something that seems to come from nowhere, it is usually the thing coiled around the bottom of the thought. "He looks at people like dogs look at bones. Some men cannot help the face the fire has left them," Ned said. "Some men cannot help the face their life has made. We will be careful of him and he of us." She nodded as if to say that a bargain could be struck with almost anything if one kept one's head. She looked sideways up at him. "Sansa says if the queen is gone, things will be better." He was careful. Things will be different. Arya accepted that too, because it was truer and she liked that. She withdrew without a curtsy and did not see the small wince he allowed himself after she had gone, because her lack of curtsy made him happy in a way that lit him and scorched him both. On the 6th morning, the king's wound looked less angry and he more so. He sweated and scowled and ordered everyone out and then called them back. Pycelle peered and pursed and declared that all would be well if all were well. He was a cautious physician. Renly came and went with a restlessness that made him seem to carry a different wind than the one that moved the curtains. Varys appeared at a distance and smiled without showing the inside of his mouth. Baelish told a joke to a guard and then repeated it to the next guard because it had gotten the first to grin. The castle had the feel of a drawn bow not yet loosed. In Lannisport, 3 ladies came to pay their respects to the queen, and each left with a different story to tell because Cersei had given each a different face to take home. Kind, cold, distracted. She ordered cherries because they were dear and had them sent to the poorest sept in the city. Not because she cared for the poor, but because it said a thing about who in this city chose who eats what. She sat with Tommen and watched him feed the kittens with little bits of fish and coached him in how not to let a kitten boss him. "You are a lord's son," she said, not harshly. "Even kittens must understand." Joffrey came in and scoffed at his brother's gentleness, and she let him scoff because there are some men for whom scoffing is the handle they must be allowed to hold or they drop the cup. Myrcella visited an old woman who had been a nurse to some cousin once, and listened to stories with her head tilted in that shy, intent way that made even hard hearts tell her more than they had meant to. Tywin wrote letters and read answers and stood with his hands behind him and saw in his mind the arrangement of men like pieces and the walls behind the pieces and the roads between the walls. When he closed his eyes, the map shone on the inside of his lids like a ghost image. He slept little and ate more than he needed. A man like Tywin pounds his hunger into the shape the day will accept. And still the days added themselves and became that thing men call time, which is only men counting. On the 7th day, Robert barked a laugh without wincing. He demanded wine and got it and did not fling the healthful draught at Pycelle's head. He spoke of a boar's eyes, which are small and stupid, and of his spear, which was stout and favored, and of his old strength, which he said had listened to him when he called it though it came slower. He asked once, in a voice like a man asking the price of meat, if the queen had written. Ned said no, and Robert grunted in a way that was neither content nor discontent. They all think they dance me, he said, and then, in something that limbed the boy so sharply it made Ned hurt. Ned, will you keep them from it? I will try, Ned said. It was as honest as he could be. Robert closed his eyes and said, good, and let go the edge of the bed and slept without the small sound he had made the last days whenever sleep took him by surprise. That night, a wind came up from the south that lifted the stink from the river and set it down again in the streets as if reminding men where it lived. In the rock, the sea banged at the base of stone with its old, insolent challenge. In between, on the gold road, dust lay without moving. A fox crossed an empty moonlit stretch and did not leave a print, which means it had decided, for the moment, to be a shadow rather than a foot. Ned went once more to the godswood. He spoke a thing to the trees he had not spoken to men, that he missed a cold that did not ask permission but simply arrived, that he missed the honest, heavy labor of snow and the honest, heavy silence of woods. He asked the trees nothing because asking had not gotten him far lately. He left the godswood and the city took him back without noticing. 3 days later, letters came from the west with the lion stamped so firm in the wax that it seemed to breathe. Tywin's words were few and polite and had edges inside them. They thanked the hand for his care of the queen's health. They praised the king's vigor. They spoke of Casterly Rock's deep gratitude. They said nothing about anything and said everything else. And the paper felt as if it had been held for a long time in very clean hands. Ned read them once and then again and had them put away in a drawer he did not lock because locks do less than men think. He went to the king. Robert sat with his shirt open and a great purple bloom of healing across his flank. He drank moderate wine with moderate appetite, which in him was nearly abstinence. He was bored enough to be good. He signed a thing that needed signing and asked to see a thing that would have made him angry 2 weeks ago and simply made him amused now. He scratched at the tape that held a poultice and let the maester slap his hand and grinned like a boy and did not mind, which is how you know a man is getting better. Bring her back when I call for her, he said at last, as if Cersei were a hound who knew her whistle. When the hunt is a story and not a wound. I am not up to her dances now. As you wish, Ned said. I do, Robert said. He glanced toward the window, where the light made a square of bright on the floor and coins of dust moved through it with their very slow opulence. You're a hard friend to have, Ned. I know, Ned said. Good, Robert said. Don't stop. He closed his eyes. Gods, I am tired of bores. Outside the sickroom, Renly leaned against a pillar and made a face like a man who has tasted something and cannot decide whether to spit or swallow. Alive men are more work than dead ones, he said. They are, Ned agreed. And more dangerous, Renly added softly. They are, Ned said again. That night, after the city had done its 1,000 small dishonesties and honesties and laid itself down again, after the king had slept and the queen had not written and the father at the rock had finished his last letter, Ned stood at his window and watched a cloud move across the moon. It was very small, stubbornly shaped like nothing. It took its time and changed the light on the tiles in the yard and moved on and gave the moon back its coin-white face. Somewhere on the gold road, a rider sat his horse and listened to the night breathe. Somewhere in Lannisport, a woman pushed a shutter closed and kept out the sea's talk so she could hear her husband snore. Somewhere in the Red Keep, a girl lay awake and mouthed the names of sword thrusts like prayers and smiled to herself. Somewhere else in the same keep, a sister counted stitches and counted again when the count did not please her. All these small, private counts belonged to a greater number. Ned felt it under him as a man feels the bridge give a little under a wagon's weight. He knew in his bones that he had bought time. He did not know the price. Men seldom do when they pay with something they will not miss until the purse is empty and the journey long yet. The city sighed and went on breathing. The river flowed. The rock stood. The sea withdrew and returned, as if to remind stone that even the oldest thing has something to learn. And in the morning, which came as mornings always do, the world woke to think about what it would do next with the day it had been given, with the choices already made, and with all the choices that would be required by those.